Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a Smackdown that's bound to get you guys arguing with each other. We're going to compare the new iPhone 5 with the Samsung Galaxy S3. Both are available on most major carriers. Both cost $199 for the 16 gig version, and we're going to compare them now. Right, so the iPhone 5 here, obviously on the left, and the Samsung Galaxy S3. This one happens to be the AT&T version, which you could probably guess because it is in that garnet red color. Now I know that you folks are going to fight with each other and question each other's intelligence and taste and so on about this because people seem to feel very strongly about Android versus the iPhone. But let's just look beyond all that kind of emotionalism for a minute and look at the features on each, so maybe it can help somebody decide which one they would like to buy. Clearly, if you're an Android person, you know. If you're an iPhone person, you know which one you want. But for those of you who are not set in stone about which platform you prefer or which phone you prefer, keep watching. The iPhone 5 has the biggest screen ever for an iPhone. Now, compared to Android lately, that isn't saying much. That's a 4-inch display, 1136 by 640 pixels. It is taller than the last generation iPhone. It has more pixels in this direction only. Same across that way. 326 ppi pixel density. The Samsung Galaxy S3 has a whopping 4.8-inch display. And really, it's pretty amazing how Samsung made the phone fairly compact given that large display. It runs at 1280 by 720 resolution, so you do get higher resolution with this screen, but it's only 306 ppi pixel density, which granted is awfully high. My eyes aren't that good. I really can't discern the difference in terms of seeing the jaggy edges of text between 306 and 326 ppi, but once you start making the screen bigger, you tend to reduce the pixel density unless you go for really, really high resolutions. Now, there's more to the display than just resolution. Both of these are pretty much adequate. Personally, I'd like to have as much resolution as possible, see more on web pages, that kind of thing, but there's also the display technology. We have Super AMOLED on the Samsung Galaxy S3, and some folks pick on that for having a kind of bluish color bias and not looking quite as sharp as some other display technologies, while the iPhone has an IPS display. IPS is still pretty much the gold standard for displays. It has very wide viewing angles, 180 degrees, very bright and very sharp. Now, both of these have good viewing angles. The iPhone is a little bit better. The iPhone is brighter. It has over 500 nits of brightness compared to the upper 300s of the Samsung Galaxy S3. And where that becomes important is if you're going to use the phone outdoors a lot. iPhones typically are quite viewable outdoors. The Samsung Galaxy S3 does get a little bit hard to see. Now, you can still make out your buttons when you're making a phone call, all that kind of thing, but if you really want to get hot and heavy with the phone and interact a lot, it's just harder to see. That's all there is to it. So in this case, it really comes down to, number one, do you want a large phone or do you want a smaller phone? The iPhone 5 is still one of the smaller smartphones on the market. But if you're really captivated by those huge displays you get on Android phones like the Samsung Galaxy S3, the HTC One X, the HTC Evo 4G LTE, then it's looking like Android for you. Now, in terms of build quality, well, this one's it's not really even a contest. You know, we've given the Samsung Galaxy S3 a hard time even compared to the HTC One X and other smartphones on the market because Samsung just loves their plastics. You get a whole lot of shiny plastic here. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't use the phone. In fact, this is my personal Samsung Galaxy S3 that I've been mostly using as my primary phone lately. But you get plastic on the front. You get even more plastic on the back. It doesn't try to hide the fact that it's plastic, though Samsung does try to give it a kind of organic form. And as you can see here, even though I've just cleaned it up, well, it picks up fingerprints. The iPhone, well, we know it's kind of the paragon of classy materials. You've got your aluminum back, you've got a lot of glass. It's just a gorgeous looking piece with perfect edges. Everything is just as you'd like it. Now, the white version that I have here does not show fingerprints much at all, which is pretty nice. The black one will show some black on the anodized aluminum. And early user reports are saying that they're getting some scratches on that black anodized aluminum. That's something that does happen with painted or colored aluminums. The HTC One S phone also had that problem. In terms of overall durability, though, the folks at SquareTrade, they offer insurance for smartphones. They work through eBay and other sources. They drop test and torture test smartphones, so they know how much to charge you for your monthly insurance premium. And the iPhone did much better than the Galaxy S3, which actually surprised me because anything that's more rigid usually doesn't absorb shock quite as much, and the plastics often help out Samsung phones, but when they did drop tests, the iPhone 5 did much better. The Samsung Galaxy S3 actually cracked even when it landed on its back being dropped from driveway height onto concrete, where the iPhone didn't suffer anything more than some scuffs and some dents. They tossed him in a swimming pool. The iPhone actually kept playing video. The Samsung Galaxy S3 turned off. And lastly, they dropped a bunch of household objects on them, and the Galaxy S3 was the one that broke when they reached the weight of a beer bottle. So there it is. Apple, they catch some grief for scratchy surfaces, things like that, but it seems like overall it's going to be a lot harder to kill the iPhone 5. Now, we haven't done those tests ourselves. These are our personal phones you're looking at right here. These are not review units. These are not provided by carriers or manufacturers, so we're not going to try to destroy these ourselves. But we'll trust the folks at Square Trade to do that, just like we trust the folks at iFixit to disassemble them. Now, when we get to spec sheets, again, this is where Android usually shines. They're kind of like, PCs versus Macs. They tend to have the cutting-edge specs, faster CPUs, all that kind of thing. We are looking at the U.S. version of the Galaxy S3 phone here, since we are in the U.S., and that one doesn't have an Exynos CPU. It has the dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 latest generation CPU. It's 1.5 gigahertz dual-core with Adreno 225 graphics. The iPhone is running on a 1 gigahertz, sounds a lot slower, doesn't it, by clock speed anyway, custom Apple-designed A6 dual-core CPU with a tri-core GPU. Now, there aren't a whole lot of cross-platform benchmark tests. For example, Quadrant is real popular as a benchmark on Android, as is Antutu. Those are not available on the iPhone, so we put them through as much as possible cross-platform benchmarks. That includes Geekbench 2, LinPack, BrowserMark, and SunSpider JavaScript test, and the iPhone 1. It won by a significant amount, in fact, in most tests. Actually, the HTC One X, also running on the same CPU at same clock speed, did a little bit better than the Samsung Galaxy S3 in those tests, but clock speed isn't everything, clearly. So we can talk about whatever other specs that the Samsung Galaxy S3 might have that are more superior than the iPhone 5, but in terms of performance, actually, the iPhone 5 is winning right now. Now, what's going to happen with some of the upcoming CPUs that we're going to see, Qualcomm Pro CPUs coming from Android in the next year or so, the tables could certainly change. But for now, the iPhone 5 seems to be the speed king. Next is the software experience. The iPhone obviously runs iOS. It runs iOS 6, which is the latest version. And it still looks pretty much like the original iPhone, doesn't it? And I know for a lot of you folks who have been buying these phones since, 2007 when the iPhone came out, and then not long after, Android phones started appearing, that can get kind of boring. Android tends to evolve the UI a bit more. Things basically always work the same. You have the multi-page home screen here, and you've got your selection of apps in a drawer here. But there's a lot more you can do. For those of you who like to customize your phone, for example, those widgets on the home screen alone, that's really useful stuff. It's one of the things that I love about Android. So not only do we have our little search box here on the home page, but we've got our weather, we've got music playback controls, you can have social networking, you can have news feeds, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of information at your fingertips, and I like that. The closest the iPhone can come is with its swipe down notifications. I can tell you if anything's going on. I get stocks, I get the weather, I can tap to tweet, which is kind of handy, and if I've got appointments or notifications of any kind, they're going to come up there. So I will give Android a definite win for versatility and customizability. Now, the thing is, a lot of people really don't want to spend a lot of time learning their phone or customizing their phone. And you Android power users and go, ha, 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 what idiots. Well, hey, that is what it is. Maybe your granny's like that, maybe your mom, maybe your best friend. Who knows? People are different. The iPhone, as always, is very easy to use, very straightforward. Here it is. Here's your palette of icons. This is what you can do. You can swipe down. You can see your notifications. Nothing's too complicated there. It's always very fast. It's always very stable, a bit more so than Android. I do manage to usually get some kind of error or crash my Android device about twice a week, and that just about never happens on the iPhone unless I'm running some pretty poorly coded game, generally speaking. Sometimes that can slow down the phone or cause me some problems, but in general, stability, ease of use still goes to the iPhone just because it has a more simple UI. Granted, it's less customizable, but it's very simple. Next, we get to the application selection, and while Android may win for customizability and making the phone uniquely your own, the iPhone still wins for app selection, particularly games. There are just a lot more high-quality games still available, a ratio of 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, generally speaking. Now, for those of you who don't play games, you can say, who cares? And then that's true, because generally all of your productivity apps, your popular apps like IMDb, Flickster, Grocery IQ for your grocery shopping, password keepers, you've got them on both platforms now. So I'm not saying by any means that Android is bereft of applications. It has plenty. It's just pretty much the games are a little bit lacking. And often when an application comes out first, it will come out for iOS first, and then it will migrate in a matter of days, weeks, sometimes even months onto Android. And that can be a little bit frustrating, especially if you're really looking for some cutting-edge new apps or games, that kind of thing. Next, we have voice control. Everybody knows about Siri. Siri overall is pretty good. Sure, she sometimes doesn't hear correctly and can make some mistakes, but overall, she's really useful. You can say natural language things and actually get stuff done. I can dictate a note, for example. I can ask her where a sci-fi movie is playing, and she'll do the job for me. Now, on the Samsung Galaxy S3, we have Samsung's S Voice, which is powered by Vlingo. It has never really worked so well for me and a lot of other people I know. I feel like my Galaxy S3 is a little bit hard of hearing. I have a pretty clear voice, and often it just won't get things right. And the queries, they try to get a couple of more natural language queries supported in there, but it's just not quite the same thing. First, we'll take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S3. We've launched S Voice, and it's showing us a selection of things we can say. We can tell it to voice dial, to compose a message, to search contacts, to make a new memo, to enter a schedule item, social networking updates, search, open an app, navigate, voice record, set a timer. So there's quite a few things here. So we're going to give that a test and see how it does. Hi, Galaxy. Create a memo.
What would you like to write?
Remember to buy milk.
You memo folks say memo, cancel, or speak it again.
Cancel.
Okay, cancel.
Okay, now we're going to try the same thing on the iPhone 5 with Siri. Create a new note.
What would you like the note to say?
Remember to buy milk.
Noted.
So there it is. In general, Siri isn't perfect, but she pretty much works, and you can see the luck that I've been having with the Samsung Galaxy S3 and S Voice. That's a feature I actually don't use on my Galaxy S3 anymore because I've just not had very good luck with it. It works much better if you're telling it to call somebody. For simple, straightforward things that we've seen Vlingo support for a long time, you'll have better luck if you do something like just tell it to call somebody or to open your contacts or to search your contacts for a certain name, though its name recognition can be a little bit iffy even with fairly standard names. And since Siri now supports location-based searches, you can search for restaurants and movies and that kind of thing, we tried searching for sci-fi movies near me, but it thought I was actually searching for iPhone movies. I guess it's been watching this video. It has the iPhone on its mind. But we'll give it one more try here. We'll just tap the button. Where are sci-fi movies playing near me? Now first it's going to go through the web browser. Since I have both Chrome and the standard browser installed, I have to pick one first because I haven't set my default yet, but it's going to ask you if you want to do that. And it's picked Into the Sun because it thought I was saying, where are Sun movies playing near me? I see we've gone from Apple to Sun. We're just going across Silicon Valley brand names here. So let's try that on the iPhone 5 with Siri now. What sci-fi movies are playing near me? And she got the query correct. And
okay,
next.
I found 4 sci-fi movies playing nearby for today.
And we don't have to go through the web browser or anything. We just get our information right here, and we can tap on that. Get information about the movie. So, yeah, I would say Siri wins over S Voice. Now, how about other specs? Both of these phones have dual-band Wi-Fi. They both have LTE and Bluetooth. They both have GPS with GLONASS, and location services are very good. When it comes to maps, You've already heard about that. Apple Maps, boy, it's a young product. And really, I would say it depends on what region you live in as to how much it's going to screw up. New York City is a very populous area. A lot of reviewers are there, and they've come up with the most errors and comical issues so far. We're in the Dallas area. A lot simpler here, folks. I'm telling you. So we haven't been able to pull up as many errors on it, but still, you don't get transit directions. You don't get Street View like you do on Google Maps. Hands down, right now, it's Google Maps is a slaughter. Google Maps is a much more mature product. It's now 5 years old, so it wins. So if you use the GPS and Google Maps a lot, clearly, get that Samsung Galaxy S3. And speaking of Google services in general, you've probably heard that Apple has pulled not just Maps, and that's not something that you can still download if you want to on the iTunes Store, but they've also yanked the YouTube application. Now, the YouTube application you can download for free. It's the official YouTube app on the iTunes Store for this, so you can get that right back. But obviously, the integration of Google services here is excellent for Gmail, for all Google services, Google Plus. It's really rocking on the Samsung Galaxy S3 and not as much on the iPhone. And in fact, even just doing something as simple as checking Gmail on my iPhone, you can actually select Gmail as one of the email types. And if you do that, it actually uses a fetch mode instead of push email, so you're not going to get your emails snappy. It's going to depend on whatever schedule you set. Or alternatively, you could go and set it up as an Exchange server and ignore that Gmail option, and that starts to get a little bit, well, complex for some people. And why should you have to do that? That's a little silly, Apple. Now, in terms of cameras, the front camera on the iPhone 5 is 1.2 megapixel, 720p video recording and video chat. 1.9 megapixels on the Samsung, also 720p video recording. The front camera on the iPhone uses a backside illuminated sensor with face detection, kind of unusual features for a front camera. And both of these guys have 8 megapixel rear shooters with LED flashes, and both can shoot 1080p video and simultaneously take still photographs. And honestly, it's a really close race here. They both have excellent cameras, and either way you're going to have something in your pocket that does just about as well as a pocket point and shoot digital camera does. So I'm going to call a tie on that one. I might like the colors a little bit better on the iPhone for photos, but I like all the settings that are available in the Galaxy S3 camera application. And if you want to see that in more detail, watch our Galaxy S3 video review. Both of these phones have true 4G LTE, and they can fall back to HSPA Plus for those of you on AT&T who are not in an LTE coverage area. And if you're a Verizon customer, well, you've got 3G, EVDO Rev and LTE to choose from. Again, if you're not in an LTE area, you will get EVDO Rev, but Verizon's got a lot of the country covered, so chances are getting pretty good that you're going to have LTE coverage. Sprint version, the same story there. It has both EVDO Rev 3G, and LTE, but Sprint has just barely started to roll out their LTE network, so chances are you're still going to be looking at 3G speeds most of the time. If you have the AT&T version of the iPhone, you can do simultaneous voice and data. You can chat on the phone while you're surfing the web. With the Verizon version, no, you can't do that. You either are using data or you are having a conversation. In that case, Android wins because you've got a phone with the Galaxy S3 on Verizon that can do simultaneous voice and data. In terms of data speeds, these are both AT&T products, and you can see our speeds. The iPhone is actually coming up slightly ahead, but honestly, this is just the latest run of tests we did today, and they bounce back and forth, and overall, I would say that they are pretty close, and both of them are insanely fast, faster than most of us really need. So even if you're using the mobile hotspot feature, that's faster than a lot of folks' Wi-Fi networks or home broadband connections. Very good there. In terms of voice quality, they are both excellent phones. Both really nice, crystal clear sound, reasonably good volume, nice outgoing call quality as well. I give the Samsung a little edge for having a better DSP. The iPhone has gotten better at rejecting ambient noise, but still some of that comes through a little bit more. Now, when you look at the difference in screen size here, if you are somebody who plays games, you can see that we've got the same game going here, Dead Trigger, and I would say that you get a much more immersive experience when you have a larger display here. So here we've got our little screen right here, and here we've got our much bigger screen. Which would you rather play games on? I would pick the Samsung Galaxy S3 if you don't mind holding a larger phone. And now we have Google's own YouTube application open on both devices. As I said, that's a free download on the iTunes App Store. Even though it's not pre-installed, you can get it. A little bit more of a boring presentation here. We have a handy selector between videos and channels, but this is a lot bigger and more dynamic. Now, of course, it helps that the Galaxy S3 has a bigger screen, so everything is going to look bigger and bolder, but nicer experience already. And now we've got one of our own videos playing. You can see a beautiful large screen, right? It looks really nice. And we're doing this over AT&T's LTE network. And now we'll go with something on the iPhone. And now we've got them side by side here, so you can see the difference in what you're going to see on screen. Again, bigger screen, more immersive, nicer. Both equally as sharp, though. And now we're going to test the browser. We're using the built-in browser on the Galaxy S3. You can download other web browsers if you want. We're using, of course, Safari on the iPhone. And we're going to load our page. We have emptied our cache. We have nothing in here, and we're going to see which one loads quicker. That's pretty damn close right there. I would say you're looking at just about the same thing. Now, on paper, if you're actually sitting down with the stopwatch, we found that a couple of tenths of a second quicker on the iPhone, but both, honestly, they're so fast that, well, there's what that is. In terms, again, of screen real estate and what you can see, you're going to get more on the Galaxy S3 because it's slightly higher resolution than the iPhone. Both pinch zoom just fine. Now, there is one other issue when it comes to the web browser, and that's the big one, Adobe Flash. But this has gotten more challenging because Adobe discontinued Flash for mobile devices on August 15th of this year. That means it's no longer on the Android market, which would be, or Google Play Store rather, which would be the easiest way to get it. So you've got to be a little bit more technically inclined, a little bit more geeky. Now, if you run over to Adobe's website and you do a search, you should still be able to find it there and do what's called sideloading. You just download it and then tap on it and go to your downloads folder, and you can install it from there. That works with the built-in web browser. That does not work with Chrome, though, because Chrome is built from the ground up to support HTML5 video and not Adobe Flash. So, yes, you can get Flash on the Galaxy S3, at least until Jelly Bean, when Google really tries to block Adobe Flash and make it harder to use it. And clearly, there's no Adobe Flash on the iPhone. So that's our iPhone 5 versus Samsung Galaxy S3 Smackdown comparison. And honestly, they're both great phones, and they're great phones for different kinds of people. Are you the big screen phone person? Are you the, I want to customize my phone? Are you the, I want it really simple and turnkey and pocketable? Do you want to have a lot of games available? That would be the iPhone. You get the idea. We've covered those points. Hopefully this video has helped you decide. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to watch our video reviews of each of these phones, read our written reviews, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.